So welcome to Water School and this special presentation from Josephat on his work in Kenya. And I'm going to hand over immediately to Walter to introduce Josephat.
Thank you, Philip. Just before I introduce Josephat, just to let everyone know that Water School Africa is a collaborative and initiative that is promoting water literacy and water holding practices in Africa. And every first Tuesday of the month, we have similar online sharing sessions where people share experiences in terms of water holding work. And if you would like to be kept informed of this, please, if you are not already on our mailing list, kindly put your name, email address, and WhatsApp number on the chat so that we can subscribe you to the Water School Africa mailing list. So this month it is my privilege to introduce an old friend and a colleague of mine, Josephat Barasa. I've known Josephat for a long period of time. I would like to say that from the time I've known him, he is a real mark in terms of how I know him has been in terms of water holding work. Josephat is a passionate permaculture trainer, and when he is conducting his trainings, he emphasizes a lot on rainwater harvesting. Josephat is based in Western Kenya, where he has established the Practical Permaculture Institute, a training center near his home, where he conducts trainings in permaculture. And in addition to that, Josephat, from the time he left his job as a teacher, he has been sharing about permaculture and rainwater harvesting with communities, which includes school communities, not only in Kenya, but across the region of Eastern and Southern Africa. So Josephat has done a lot of work in countries such as Uganda, Tanzania, Zimbabwe, and Zanzibar, among many other places. So he has accumulated experience in rainwater harvesting over the years, and it is really a privilege for him to share his expertise with us today. So over to you, Josephat. If I've left something that you would like to add, you can go ahead. So the platform is yours, JB.
Thank you, my brother. You have said a lot about me. Thank you so much. Because I don't have time, and I know all of us don't have time, I'll go straight to the point. I have also known Walter Nyika for quite a number of years. I think, if I'm not very wrong, over 10 years. We've been working together in different programs and training together, sharing a similar training platform. Back to myself. So thank you so much for giving me this space to actually disseminate my rich experience in permaculture and especially working with water. Just to preempt what, not really preempting, but just to affirm what Walter has just said about me, that I am actually popularly known as JB. That's across East and Southern Africa. I'm known as JB, but JB stands for Josephat Barasa. A former high school teacher, that's who I am, that's what I am and who I am, who I was, and I still, of course, for us in Kenya, we believe once a teacher, you are always a teacher. I actually was, I can say I was the first person in Western Kenya to forfeit my teaching career, lucratively teaching career, in favor of farming, but using permaculture principles and approaches. I think I want to ask Ash if you can be able to share the first slide with us, please, kindly. Ash, are you there? Thank you. Yeah, so the first slide is about my background, which I've already explained. I think point number one, I've already talked about it. A former school teacher, high school teacher, who forfeited my teaching career in favor of farming, but using permaculture approaches and principles. I hope everybody is seeing that slide. Now,
you need to click on one of the existing slides.
Sorry?
No, I'm just saying to Ash, if you could click on slide number 2.
Yeah.
Right, JB, you can.
Slide number one, which is just almost being phased out, that I took my permaculture course with Michael Nichols from Salt Spring Island, that's in British Columbia, Canada. And after my course, apart from Michael, I'm also happy that I did my course with many more other experienced permaculture practitioners and trainers in the world. Amongst them is Warren Brush, and many more among others. Then after that, I actually moved with the speed to start implementing permaculture right away from my doorstep. This is not very important for everyone, but the first thing I did, I think Walter has been able to visit my farm. The first thing I did is that I wanted to show to the rest of the world that I'm actually practicing what I teach. So with the knowledge I acquired at those many years back, I think that's about 18 years ago, with the knowledge I acquired, I actually bought my own piece of land, 4 acres, and gradually started transforming my piece of land into a permaculture, a complete permaculture demonstration site and food forest. Currently, the piece of, the piece of land, our permaculture demonstration site is called Balita Ravens Farm, which is actually located in Western Kenya. In case there is anybody who is traveling, who is within Kenya, and you would want to come and see how permaculture works on a large scale, you are most welcome to my farm. We also offer accommodation at the farm at the same time. So then I actually moved to acquire another piece of land close to the farm, where I put up a Practical Permaculture Institute of Kenya. That's where the offices, that's where my offices are based. And for over 15 years, I've been actually offering both training and practical installation, both permaculture training and practical installation in different parts of East and Southern Africa, using water management skills as part of the approaches. So the topic I'll be talking about on water management and water harvesting, it is not something I'm trying to guess, it is something I have lived with for over these years. And I do this in both tropical and outside tropical climate, including the semi-arid areas, using different skills and approaches. I want to request Ashit to move us to the second slide. So I think it is already indicated that all the permaculture courses that I offer and the practical installation, that means I actually do both training and I do practical installation. I implement. So all the permaculture courses and practical installations are not complete without water. That's very, very important. And in fact, permaculture is not complete without considering water. And we actually do not have time to go into the details of water, but this is just a point to note that there is no permaculture course which will be completed like a 72-hour training without training on water. There is no installation that you will do without considering water. It's not complete without water. And so most of my permaculture training that I do across the regions that I've already mentioned are mainly focused on the following groups. Group number one are the teachers. When we are working with the school, or when we are taking permaculture to the community through the school, we actually consider training the teachers in both skills and practical installations. Apart from the teachers, our focus is also on the learners. And remember, I've actually indicated here that this is both primary, secondary, and tertiary institutions. Apart from those two groups, our focus when we are both teaching and doing the installation, our focus is on the community, especially the parents of the involved schools, especially if we are working with the school, parents of the involved schools. And of course, of late, we are mainly now focusing on empowering women with the similar skills who will take the knowledge to their respective households. And we're not saying we are just looking at, we are actually based on, focusing on women. We are actually focusing on everybody, all the sex, only that we are putting more emphasis on women. Because at the end of the day, in every household, especially in Kenya and in other parts of Africa, in every household, women are the ones who will know at what time do we need to have food for the family. So they are the ones who always go out looking for vegetables or food. That's 70% of the breadwinners today in our communities in Africa are women, especially in terms of food security. So that's why we are putting emphasis on women empowerment. Then apart from putting our focus on women, we are also using permaculture approaches in transforming the old mining fields that require rehabilitation. After mining, we all know the land is degraded or degradable. So we have to find a way of how to rehabilitate that land using permaculture principles, but still using water as a skill. So let's move to the next slide, kindly. Now, I've been talking about focusing our attention, working with the schools. The slide just before us are learners. of a specific school, and this is in Makueni, for those of you who come from Kenya. Makueni is in the semi-arid areas. That's part of Lower Eastern. So we are training the learners right from grade 4 up to grade 8, because our curriculum has been changed from 844 to CBC, competence-based curriculum of education. So that's in Kenya now. And now, as we train the learners, we identify the key boys and girls, the key learners who are passionate from each specific class. And the key learners are the ones that we actually make them to be TOTs. And our intention is to make sure that this project becomes sustainable from outside, not necessarily being sustainable from inside, not necessarily being sustained from outside. So before us is one of the learners who has been trained, and now he is standing before the other learners, training the other learners. So let's move to the next slide. I think in the next slide, in the current slide, we can see, sorry, just come back. Okay, thank you. In this slide, that is JB, that's me. And I'm using one of the tools that we use in water harvesting. I'll be talking about this tool at some point. So I'm using this tool that we call an EFREM. So that's a group of learners, a group of participants. I think these are mainly teachers and parents who are undergoing training in a specific class, and that is in Machakos. And first of all, before we go out in the field, we have to train them on how to use this instrument called an EFREM, how to construct, and how to apply the EFREM on the ground, because we are actually going out to mark out the contour lines in the field. So that's me training. Next slide. That is still the construction of an EFREM. I think that is a parent. Yeah, that's one of the parent. And that's one of the teachers together with me, who is a female teacher from PPI Kenya, who is now also ensuring that the construction of an EFREM is taking a professional approach. Otherwise, you can easily construct a wrong EFREM. So just making sure that it's accurate and it's professional and to the standard. And that's still inside the class. Let's move to the next slide. Now, that's now the one bending. After we have constructed an EFREM in class with the participants, that's a group of parents. I guess this should be either Kitui or Makueni still. We are still in the same arid areas. So after constructing an EFREM in class, we now take the entire group outside the class. That's now in the open. Before we start working, we now take the outside group out, and we get some of the participants who are attending to my training in class, and now they're able to make a second EFREM on their own without any involvement, without any teacher's involvement. That's why you can see the other teacher has withdrawn. I've also withdrawn, but I'm the one in a white t-shirt and a hat. But I'm at a distance, just trying to make sure that they're actually following the guideline given in class. But they're constructing their own EFREM. We are about to go out and start marking out the contours. Let's move to the next slide. Yeah, that is still, so that was the second, but we are going to divide a team of about 40 to 50 parents into different groups. So we work with parents on a project, and that's still in a school. So the other Ephraim that has been constructed belongs to another group. So now this time we would want to see a woman involved in making an Ephraim. So that's why the other teacher is closer to her, but I'm also still at a distance. We are going, at the end of the day, we might make as many as 5 or 6 different Ephraims because they will be used by different groups. Thank you. Let's move to the next slide. Yeah, so that is still now, that's almost the last. So the teacher is now giving feedback because the last Ephraim is about to be made, still using women constructing an Ephraim. It's very interesting to see women holding the handsaw, a machete, hammer, nails, and doing this kind of work. So we are just giving some guideline to this lady who is about to make the final Ephraim. Thank you. Let's move to the next slide. So now, after we have constructed the Ephraim, we now involve, remember, the same things that we do to the parents is the same thing that we do to the learners. That's why now you can see in this slide, we have a few learners who are the few learners that we see. These are the TOTs, the train of train among the learners. So we have the TOT parents, then we have the TOT learners. Now we are getting them out in the field, and now we are showing them how to use the Ephraim. Now we are already using an Ephraim in the field. So we are always marking out. And that's me in green, just trying to observe and make sure that the Ephraim is being applied in the field. Let's move to the next slide. So apart from using an Ephraim, before I talk about water management systems, apart from using an Ephraim, we also use another instrument, which unfortunately it has not been captured here. These are just the simple instruments or tools that are made out of the locally available material, like small pieces of timber or straight wood within the school compound. Apart from that, we can also use an eyelid spirit level or a spirit level, but we've just concentrated showing the participants about an Ephraim, because I think it's cheaper if we use an Ephraim than going out of our way to start looking for an eyelid, which is expensive. Now, when we are doing a practical installation in the field, or we are training participants or learners or students generally on a permaculture course on water management system, it's important to note here that there are 4 different levels of water in a permaculture design system that needs proper and professional management. We need to work with this water. We need to work with the rooftop water. And I've always been sharing this with many people that I've trained in Africa. Even if you don't have money to buy a water tank, you can still harvest the roof water and redirect it to where you want that water to be utilized. For example, now I'm sorry I didn't take these pictures at PPA Kenya, but I have a few water tanks at PPA Kenya. I think Walter's been to PPA Kenya, you've been able to see that. But most of the water that I've harvested from the roof, I've directed it to 3 different ponds, which are seated on the PPA Kenya campus. So roof water harvesting is very key. The second form of water that we need to work with is the gray water. This is water that is used after washing clothes, after washing our dishes, even after the showers or bathing. We also need to find a way of how we can recycle the same gray water system, the same gray water, and reuse it. So that's why it's also reflected here. Not very many people know that this water can also be recycled and used. It's important in this course to know that it can be used. Another form of water, number 3, is the surface runoff, which from my own end and experience, I call it the brown water. After heavy downpour, the surface runoff, this water should be harvested, stored, recycled, and reused in different ways. Then the fourth form of water is the black water. That's the heavy chemicalized water, water that has heavy metals. Now, while designing, while dealing with the schools or private food security landscapes, or that's generally private property, while working with schools or private property or mining fields, it is important to concentrate on the first 3 to maximize production and ensure no single drop is lost. It's important to work, when working with the schools, it's important to work with the first form of water. That's number 1, rooftop, gray water, and the surface runoff. This is very important, but especially number 3, it's very important. Now, among the common storages that are used to store water and to spread water, and even and slow the process of flowing, among the common storages, which I've indicated in this slide, are number 1, we have said among the common storage, sink, spread, and slow the process, which are used. Number 1 is the water tank, or the tanks, the water tanks. I'll be talking about the size of the tanks at some point. Then we have the swales. For those of you who are attending this kind of presentation for the first time, I've explained that these are shallow ditches which are constructed on contours. Food circles. Sometimes we call them food circles because I know the common name, and even the name that Billy Molson uses is banana circle. But I'm calling it food circles because apart from the banana planted inside that circle, you can also introduce sugarcane. So once it has become a mixture, it can be referred to as food circles. And then the ponds, the dams, the channels, the speed checks, the traps. Those are just the different techniques, the different forms, the different storages, the different directions that we use when we are working, especially when we are working with water harvesting. You are free to be in touch with me. I can be taking you bit by bit on what are these channels, because we are not in a permaculture course, it's just a presentation. Then the common tools used when working with water, and which I've also indicated before, are an A-frame, an eyelid level, just but to mention a few. Of course, not forgetting the spirit level. Let us move kindly to the next. Now we are looking at how to harvest water. It is paramount to understand specific water information and rationales before designing the harvesting techniques. What I mean here is that it's always important to furnish yourself with the information related to water before you come up with how to deal with it. It's always important to understand the different types of information concerning water. Otherwise, you will cause a disaster. So let me single out the rooftop water. So if you want to harvest the rooftop water, it's always important to understand the volume of water that the roof will be carrying. The volume of water. It's also important for you to understand the surface area of the roof. For example, if it's a big surface area, what I mean is the size of the roof. So it's important to understand what amount of water will this roof hold or collect, and what is the surface area of the roof. That's the house. The two will, that's part of the information that you need to know, because the reason why you need to know the two, that's the volume of water and the surface area of the roof, is because the two will inform on the size of the tank. This is one of the mistakes that many people do, especially when they are buying water tanks. You have to buy a water tank in relation to the amount of water that will be collected on that roof and the size of the roof. Then it's also important for you to know the relative location or position of the tank in relation to the roof, because you have to know where do you want to locate the tank, and then in case the tank is full, where do you want to direct the overflow. Not very many people have ever known that usually the overflow from the tank is always more than what is stored in the tank. So it's also very important when you have that information, then you have to know the position of the tank and where you will take the overflow water. Another very important thing to consider is the surface runoff. So, and that's now you want to harvest, when you are coming up with the techniques of the surface runoff. So the surface runoff, you also have to understand before you come in with any other system on the ground, before you even have to construct the A-frame, you have to do a survey, you have to understand the land terrains. You have to know the topography of your land. You also have to know the size or the area of the land that you want to deal with. But more important, you have to furnish yourself with the annual rainfall, the amount of water that your area receives in a year. And this information is collected both from our agricultural offices, or nowadays it's very easy, you can always Google and you'll find this information. Then, oh, sorry, okay, I think that's where I am. These are key thematic concerns to consider in determining the harvest. So these are this is very important information for you to consider when you want to come up with the harvesting techniques. So once you have understood, for example, if it's the surface area, then you will be able to know where do I position my first swale, and in case the first swale is full, if I don't want to cause a disaster on that piece of land, how do I connect the first swale, water flowing from the first swale being stored in the first swale, and then where do I put the second swale? But in case the distance from the first swale to the second swale is slightly longer, where do I store the water first to reduce speed before it goes to the second swale? These are some of the things that's why you have to understand the thematic concerns that I've mentioned about. That's the land topography, the topography of the land, the terrain, and all that kind of stuff. Then you also have to, in case you want to deal with gray water, and this I want to caution my participants today, that I've gone to different countries in Africa where I've seen people trying to actually harvest, collect, store, and recycle gray water, and I've realized that it's a disaster in many areas because they are doing it without real professional knowledge. This number 3, you really have to be sure that you understand the techniques of harvesting the grey water, because it has chemicals. It is contaminated water. So it's important that you have to understand the techniques. So water with either light or heavy metals, I've just explained about the grey water, that requires some sort of recycling process. But I've said consider using biological approaches and assume not to discharge relative to the consumers. I mean, assume not, otherwise you can easily cause some health hazard to the consumers. That's why I'm actually putting a precaution. When you are dealing with grey water, you have to know that you actually know it. If you don't know it, it's good to work with somebody who understands, because it is contaminated water. Let's move on. So that's just a picture showing about a water tank that is positioned close to that house. And you can see that we have also shown where the tap is going to be placed. But then this picture does not show the position of the overflow. But these are some of the things that you have to consider: the overflow from the water tank. Thank you. Let's move on. So now these are pictures we have already now marked out. You can see in the picture there are people working. There is a string both left and right, and so all those are contour lines. The pegs are shown. So that's why I said, if you consider some of the thematic considerations, they will also help you to understand the width of your swale. So we have already marked out, and we have marked out with the pegs and the string, so that as we construct this swale, we are not working outside the contours. So that's just to show that these are both parents, teachers, and learners now constructing a swale on already a piece of land which is going to be transformed into a food forest in the school. Thank you. So that's a specific chairman of the school management committee who is so much interested in this knowledge, and now he's getting hold of me, and I've just gone to visit him at his own piece of land. Now I'm showing him how to start marking out swales on his piece of land. So he's already transforming his piece of land, but he's dealing with water first. So that's part of the spillover effect of the project from the school to the community. Thank you. That is still at the school. I remember this is a school in Makueni, still a different school in Makueni. Now they are actually going deeper. They did the first excavation of the swale. Now they are going deeper. So that's still a team of parents working on that specific swale. Let's move on. That's another group. So that's different from the other group. As I've said, that we work with different parents, a bigger number of parents, and we actually do a whole school approach. This is still the same school where we have just seen, but now this is in a different area. So because it's a whole school approach, we are not just taking one specific area and turning it into a food forest. No, we're not doing 4K club. We are actually transforming the entire school field into a food forest. So that's now a team of parents, and especially the women who are in their own group, but they're also transforming that space. They are working on a swale. They have marked out, and now they are excavating the swale. Let's move on. So now, this is not a swale. This is now a banana circle. So this is also in a different school. This is now in Machakos. And now they are, Machakos is in one of the counties in Kenya, for those of you who come from Kenya. But for those of you who are coming from outside Kenya, actually, these are, you either call them provinces or districts. For us, we are calling them counties. So this is now a banana circle, which will be receiving water from the first swale that is collecting a lot of water from those buildings that you see, or those buildings you can see behind the classrooms. We don't have a water tank, but we must maximize that water. So all that water will be ending up in one swale, but it's going to be a lot of water. So eventually we are going to allow, and that is also very important, after constructing the swale, you are also to get in with the tape measure to understand the volume that you are letting out, so that it doesn't break by itself. You must give it a spillover, but then the spillover, you also have to understand what amount of water are you letting out, and what amount do you want to settle and to remain in that swale, because it must benefit some of the crops inside that swale. So now, after that, in the event of a heavy rain, the first swale will be full, but before water goes to the second swale, it's going to be a lot of water, so it will be resting in a banana circle. Then that banana circle will be feeding the second swale. Let's move on. Yes, so I think they are actually the soil. This is also one of the mistakes that people do when they are constructing a swale. I've seen these mistakes in many other parts I've gone. The soil is always placed on the lower side of the contour, not on the upper side, because we want to allow infiltration of water inside the soil. So now that soil was a huge pile, but along the contour, so they are stabilizing that soil to become a band, and which will also be used to grow crops that will hold the soil together. Let's move on. So still, that's just another. So these are now learners. So in the afternoon, the parents have gone. We were working with parents in the morning up to lunchtime for us in Kenya. Then after classes, the participants have come out, and now they're also working on their own, at a specific area, using the same techniques. So this is just a continuation of what we've been doing with the parents, but now this time we are working with the learners. Thank you. Still working with the learners. Now this time the learners are stabilizing the band as well. Let's move on. So now the swale has already been constructed, and you can see that we have introduced banana pits or banana holes inside the swale, because we also want to make sure that we maximize production inside the swale. So one of the parents is now ready to plant a banana, and then you can see the rest of the parents have already planted sweet potatoes on the band, but then now she's explaining the techniques of introducing food inside the soil. Thank you. So this is now in prison. Apart from schools, we also work with prison. It's a very small space. So we have constructed the swale behind this structure, and we don't have a water tank, but we are now constructing small banana circles in front of that building to introduce bananas so that the water that will be coming from the roof will be captured and will be fed, it will be captured to actually allow to feed the bananas. And so the bananas will be providing a cooling effect, providing microclimate around the building. But this time we are working with prisoners. And that's where we have said that small banana circles constructed near the building in the prison to ensure more food to produce, more food is produced for the inmates. And this time we are training both the prison officers and the inmates, still using water harvesting techniques. Let's move on. So I think I've talked a lot. It's time for questions and answers.
Thank you very much, Josephat, for the detailed presentation. So we open now up for discussion, questions, and clarifications that may be needed. The first one is in the chat, which says, "Are you also working on composting toilets?" JB?
Absolutely. Yes, definitely. You remember even at the PPI Kenya, we have a composting toilet. So we also, of late, we are actually emphasizing on the need to have the composting toilets in schools, though this will take us a bit of time for us in Africa because of the attitude and mindset. Because if we keep on having pit latrines in schools, and still we are actually having underground water that is also part of the water that we use, then over the time we shall be actually destroying our water cycle. So we are working with composting toilets.
Thank you very much. Other reactions, questions?
I have a question. This is Anish Kanji from Zambia.
Mm-hmm.
Hello.
Yes, I'm getting you, Anne.
Yes, because my phone will die very soon. Thank you very much for that presentation and the
Yes.
capturing of water and the measuring of how much water you get is very cardinal information because we are asked a lot of questions like that. Maybe are you done with this, or you're going to show us also the impact now of that's when you store water, when you plant things were planted, how it looked like? Do you have pictures of that?
I do, unless I share those pictures at some point. I do have a lot, but I just because I knew we have a very short time during this presentation, I don't have pictures showing the impact. I wish I knew that, I would have done it. We have quite a number in different parts of Africa.
Thank you.
I don't mind sharing either at individual level or as we continue.
Yeah, they can be shared in the group, water movement group. Then
sure.
The chat that can brown water be used for fish ponds?
Brown water can be very much used for fish ponds. It's even the best. It's even the best because it has lots of nutrients that the fish will require. So you only need to know when you are dealing with it, you just need to know before you bring it to set up a pond, you just need to know where you're getting it from. And of course, when it will be coming into the property, you have to know at what stage do you introduce what we call the silt trap, so that we don't have so much silt getting into the pond. Otherwise, it will cause some of the fish to suffocate. So definitely, to answer the question, yes, that definitely is the best.
And then there's a question on the dimensions of the swales. Do you have any comment on calculating the dimension of the swales? Because this depends on the slope, the soil quality, etc.
There are two areas that we need to calculate. There are two things that you need to calculate when you're working with the soils. One, you also you have to calculate the soil based on the landscape, that's the topography, and which is the slope. So if the land is so steep, I will always advise people to actually position swale after swale 4 meters from each other. If the land is not very steep, I would actually recommend 8 meters or 7 meters or 10 meters. But then you will also be able to calculate you can also calculate the amount of water that each swale holds. And I don't mind, because we shall be sharing, I'll work it out with you and see if I can be able to share this manual. I mean, one of my books that I've written on water, working with water, the first volume from PPI Kenya. We have it online, and then people can be able to see the methodology of calculating the amount of water. I've done all those calculations, including calculating the roof of the house. So yes, these calculations can be shared.
Thank you very much. Then one question is how we join the water movement group. So for this one, I will respond. Kindly put your name and contacts and WhatsApp number in the chat so that we can help you to join the water movement group. Then the other question is how does one get to the Permaculture Institute? I think that's the Practical Permaculture Institute, and contacts if possible, please.
Do you want me to share my contact right now, or I can share it on the water movement group?
I think in the group or in the chat, that's fine, either way.
I think I'll share my contact in the group, with the group. So both my email, my WhatsApp number, and yeah, I'll share all those details. But for those of you who come from Kenya, PPI Kenya is found in western part of Kenya, that is in Busia County. So once you have my number, it's always very easy to get access to PPI Kenya.
And then there is Janet from Kitui, Kenya, who is also asking for the pictures that you put in the group, the pictures of the impact of rainwater harvesting. And then there is an input to say biodigesters and composting toilets. Maybe they're also asking for pictures that can be put in the group.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, no, I'm not asking for pictures. I wanted to ask a question about biodigesters and composting toilets, because we have established a biodigester for someone to accumulate gas for cooking, but they're only at the moment using cow manure and vegetable stuff. But could you link a composting toilet to a biodigester so you have a kind of closed circle?
Yes. Actually, if you have to do that, then that's a very good question. Like, for example, now, initially we've been asking people to decompose the waste using ash, sawdust, so that eventually it is now taken back to be recycled on land. But then if you don't want to go that process, then you can actually store the waste in a different container. And now instead of diluting the heat that will, because if you use sawdust and ash, then it will lower down the amount of energy that will be used. So then that means it has to be stored in a different way.
Okay, well, that's very helpful. But then obviously the waste, you cannot be putting things like baby nappies and sanitary towels, and I suppose you can put newspaper in. What should you avoid?
When you are actually dealing with the composting toilets, you must make sure things like baby waste, the way you have said, the sanitary towels, or heavy carbon paper, or plastics, or all those things should be, one has to be very careful so that they are not part of the composition.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you. Very helpful.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And a number of people are putting their contacts in the chat, but kindly include your country code when you are putting your phone number so that we know which country you are from. Otherwise, it's a continent-wide movement. So we need to have the country code when you give us your number. Thank you. Feel free to unmute also to ask your question or to make your comment.
Zachary has his hand up.
Go ahead, Zachary.
Yes, my name is Zachary Makanya. I am working for REDEP in Eastern Kenya. I just wanted to say that I'm an eyewitness to the work of JB. Is the best trainer in this part of the world, and he can come to train about permaculture, and he does it in style. It involves everybody, it involves the parents, it involves the students, he also involves, so I just say, I want to say I'm an eyewitness to what he has done. He has done great jobs, and I am very sure he can be a great resource to the water school movement. Thank you.
Thank you so much, my brother.
And maybe I can ask JB, once you've taught a school or a community, what difference does it make that that community knows how to manage their land and that they can increase their productivity and their food production? And does it make them more confident because they're not having to rely on external factors, but they know how to look after the land themselves?
I think the way Zachary has said that he's part of the eyewitness to the work that I do, especially in schools. Unfortunately, Zachary, for Karedani Primary School, we didn't go to the climax of it all for a number of reasons. But otherwise, when we are working with the school, it's a journey we start working together. That's why we actually implement this program in phases. And now the approach, the current approach we are using is that after we have transformed the school and we have trained the teachers, we have trained the learners, we actually ask them to form a group, kind of a movement amongst the parents. The parents, we ask them to form a group, and then after they have formed a group, we now move away from the school and go to the community through the groups, so that we actually get to know, to understand, are they really implementing what they learned at school? And have they done it the way it is supposed to be done? And are they seeing the results? So we actually guide them. But I can attest that quite a number of communities, after this kind of knowledge, they are not only transformed, their mindset is not only transformed, their landscape is transformed, they are food secure, and they are confident of self-sufficient, especially when it comes to food security and climate change resilient measures. Quite a number of communities are completely transformed.
Thank you very much. There's a question in the chat asking for the distance between the pond and the silt trap.
Okay. Actually, you need to introduce not less than 3 different silt traps inside the directional channel, because you need to get the first silt trap should be at the beginning of the directional channel. That's the channel that will be bringing in huge volume of water from outside. Just 1 meter away, you need to have a silt trap. Then perhaps after 5 meters, you also need to have another silt trap. Then 2 meters before the pond, 2 meters before the water gets into the pond, you need to have another silt trap, just to make sure that fine silt is deposited into that trap. So at least 2 meters away from the pond. But you can have at least a minimum of 3, depending on the length of the channel, at least a minimum of 3.
Thank you very much. There's a question on whether the manual that you referred to is on a website, and if so, if you could share the website address when you do postings in the movement group.
I think it's on the document PWC, WPS, and I think I should be having part of this document. I think you have it. I will ask you to share it with the rest of the participants. It is having other topics, but inside the training manual, you will be able to get detailed information on what. So we have it online.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Please feel free to unmute and ask.
Rob, did you have a question?
I'm Hepzibah Stole from Nyawode Permaculture and Environmental Club in Manman District. I wanted to ask about digging up a swale. He actually mentioned something saying that you should put the soil from a swale at the lower side of the contour. Why do we have to put it at the lower side?
Okay, that's good. Because one, you want to make sure that water is running in case there is an overflow that is coming from the garden. Just coming or even before to make sure that when on the lower side, you want to make sure that water is not getting into the swale and being washed away. It is actually a big amount of water is stored. So you have to construct a barrier. So the reason why we are putting it on the lower side is because we want it to be like a barrier to hold the water inside the swale.
Thank you very much. And there's a request in the chat that when you share pictures also share some pictures that show the silt traps.
Okay, good.
Any other reactions? Okay, if not, we would like to again remind every one of us that these online sharing sessions on water literacy and water holding practices are open to everyone. And if you are new to this, kindly put your contacts, including the country code, in the chat, and then we will make sure that you are added to the water movement group, and you will be notified about future sessions. And also these groups are spaces where there's a lot of exchanges in terms of water holding work. So there is quite a number of learning exchanges that are happening within the water movement group. And a lot of people in the chat are appreciating the session. So thank you so much, Josephat. And we also need to point out that the session has been recorded, and the link to the recording will also be shared in the group, water movement group, so you can be able to watch this. I have particularly enjoyed this presentation because of its detailed nature in terms of how we approach and make the water holding structures that are so important on our lands. So once again, thank you very much, JB, and best wishes for your good work going forward. And we hope to continue learning from your experiences as you will share information in the WhatsApp group. So thank you, JB. So any but would like to make some remarks, you are welcome. Not then.
Sorry, Walter.
Yes, go ahead, Swamba.
I'm sorry to come with the late questions regarding what's the impact of their work on the water table recharge. Did they remark any change in the water table in the areas where they worked? Thank you.
Do you want me to respond to that, Walter?
Yes, go ahead, JB.
Thank you, my brother. I actually want to say absolutely the main reason why we are working with the water on a land is for two reasons. One, using the capillary level, the capillary process. Using the capillary process to ensure that the underground nutrients are also brought up the surface, brought closer to the crops for the crops to access. Two, to ensure that the water table is raised. So the more water you sink on land, in fact, I always say that the best place to store water is not in the tank. The best place to store water is in the soil. So the more water you sink in the soil, the more you raise the water table. And when the water table is rising up, absolutely, I want to say the nutrients are also coming up. So that will tremendously bring a big change and good results to the crops. Absolutely, yes.
Thank you very much.
So thank you both. And there was a question in the chat on the water movement group link that will be used to share the additional information. And the link has been put in the chat. And you can also just put in your contacts there so that you can be added to that group. It's a WhatsApp group that we use to share information on water literacy and water harvesting practices. Thank you.
Pete has his hand up.
Go ahead.
You'll have to unmute yourself, Kapete.
Kindly unmute yourself and make your contribution. Kapete A. Maybe there are network challenges there. So whilst waiting for Kapete A to unmute and contribute, if you need to make another contribution, please go ahead. Kapete A, can you hear us? I think Kapete A is got disconnected and there should be internet challenges. So yeah, I would like to thank you all for making the time to this session, and we have appreciated JB for sharing his wealth of experience with us all, and we'll continue to share in the water movement group. So the information that you've asked for will be posted in the group, and for those who have indicated their contacts and would like to be added to the group, you will be added, and we'll also share in the group the link to the recording for this session. So thank you everyone for your time, for your interest, and for your active participation in this session. It has been a very productive time for all of us. Wishing you all the best. Enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.